Hello YouTube. I want to talk a bit about the concept of fragmentation from the idea of spiritual psychology. And just for the record, there are many spiritual psychologies out there, as I've said in other videos. When you look at the ideas of Sri Aurobindo in the East and some of the integral models put forth by Ken Wilber and the transpersonals and also a bit of the humanists, there are many spiritual psychology theories out there, especially those of Jung. And to begin with, I want to talk a bit about the self. The self can be described as an inner guiding factor that's different from the conscious awareness. And according to Carl Jung, the self can only be grasped, or you can only become aware of this principle through bringing conscious awareness to your dreams, to your actions, your behavior, and your thought patterns. According to Jung, he also said that the Greeks called it the daimon. It's D-A-I-M-O-N-D, an inner daimon, or daimonis, D-A-I-M-O-N. And it's an overwhelming psychic energy, the essential self. And according to Jung, it's defined as the inner guiding factor that's different from the conscious personality. And Jung also says later on in some of his writings that this inner guiding factor can only be exposed, or you can only become aware of it through a recollection of your dreams, by studying your unconscious dream patterns, and by looking at your behavior and your thoughts. Your essential self is, according to spiritual psychology, the regulating center that acts to bring about the maturation of your personality. In other words, it essentially acts as a catalyst to, in a sense, mature your personality and grow you up. And how far you develop and how far you grow depends on whether or not your ego, or you allow the ego to listen to those impulses which seem to come on a subliminal level. Because again, we're talking about some unconscious stuff at work here, and if in fact it's unconscious, then how do we even know it exists in the first place? It's kind of like, you know, it's like you're grasping air, you know, because it's unconscious, but yet we seem to know it exists because it creeps up into our conscious awareness, and we find ourselves doing things, and we find ourselves feeling things, and we're pulled in different directions, and we feel oftentimes fragmented. According to Jung, your ego is the flashlight that illuminates those hidden capacities from within, and it's the more conscious aspect of our nature. You know, it serves as the guiding mechanism. It's the door in which unconscious energies pass through as they're coming up to the surface level. They pass through the ego, you know. I am the way, the truth, and the light. No man comes to the Father but by me. It's sort of like a parable for the ego. Even though Jesus said it, it's still very true. The Father being the essential self, and Jesus in that instance representing more so that conscious awareness. You know, those unconscious energies from the Father or the Mother within passing up through the doorway of the ego into your conscious awareness and into yourself. Now watch this. If it does not come by way of the ego, according to Carl Jung, the information in which you need in order to bring about certain changes in your life, if that information from an unconscious level doesn't come by way of the ego, it remains unconscious. So there are hidden capacities and hidden tendencies within you, within your very being. There are hidden desires, and some of them good and some of them maybe not so good, but they're hidden right inside of you. No man cometh to the Father but through me. In that instance, the Father within being the unconscious, and Jesus in a sense in that scripture acting sort of as the doorway, similar to the ego. In order for those unconscious impulses to pass up from the unconscious into your conscious awareness and into, you know, your reason and into your sight, for you to recognize them, they would have to first pass through the ego. And so that's the job and the function of the ego. A healthy one is to, in a sense, be that conscious awareness, that flashlight, that part of you that allows you to recognize what's coming out of you. Now watch this. Jung also talks about something that he calls the individuation process. It's the process of what he calls becoming whole, or a holistic person, or an integrated person, as opposed to someone that's fragmented. You know, sometimes we feel pulled apart because of these situations that are coming from life, and whether we know it or not, a lot of times we are participating in those things that are coming towards us because something from within us is magnetizing those situations to come to us, not necessarily to bring us harm, but if we can, in a sense, listen to that individuation process, listen to those inner impulses from the soul, from the unconscious, we can get the lesson and get that which we need and then move on. Carl Jung says that the wise person doesn't just sit and complain about what life is bringing to them. In fact, they listen to the impulse of the unconscious and then decide whether or not they should grow a bit to the left or grow a bit to the right. And so that's what I want to talk to you about in this video. The idea or the concept of fragmentation comes about when we reject what life is bringing to us and we ignore and shut down what our soul is telling us to do as well. So we have this conundrum here. We're stuck, you know, in a sense. We're fighting against life and also shutting down on the inside. And whenever you find yourself doing that, what you are doing is you are limiting yourself and your ability to respond, your responsibility, your ability to respond to life. And when you limit yourself as far as your ability to respond to life, then you don't get the maximum result of whatever situation you're going through. You know, regardless of what you're experiencing right now in your home life, in your work life, in your career, you have to listen to those urges and those impulses that are coming up from within. What you are experiencing right now in your life is a part of your growth. It's very necessary. Even if it is a seemingly breakdown, it's necessary. And the thing about life is that each life is unique. So each individuation process is unique. Jung even says that all of our paths to self-realization or self-actualization. We're not talking about some mystical process. We're really, truly talking about a process of growing up and maturity. That process is unique. It's unique to all of us. So the level of turmoil or the level of pain that we receive or the level of drama that's drawn to us is unique to the individual. According to Jung, the process of individuation is unique, and individuation is this idea of becoming more holistic, more embodied in a sense. It's opposite of the idea of fragmentation, where you have all these different parts of yourself. You know, you have the ego, which is the more conscious part of our awareness, and then you have the shadow, which is that part of us consciously. Watch this, whenever we feel drama or we don't want to accept or embrace something or something's difficult to us, we in a sense reflect that negativity first back into our own selves and suppress it. We try to dump it into our unconscious, and then once it builds up there, we psychologically project it outward onto someone else or something else when we get tired of dealing with it. It's like an overload of information or an overload of trash, and what happens is after it builds up within us, we psychologically project it out. But the first thing that happens is we press it inward because we refuse to accept it. Because remember, at the end of the day, the individuation process is all about personal growth and the path to self-actualization. And each path to self-actualization is unique. The experiences are unique, and the formulas and the systems are unique. That's why Carl Jung struggled with trying to systemize his depth psychology, because it's like trying to, if you're a scientist trying to, in a sense, determine whether or not the light that you're looking at is a particle or a wave. You know, when you look at it, depending on how you're viewing it, it's a particle, and if you look at it under a certain circumstance, it's a wave. It's both and that's how life is. It's fragmented. We're both divine, we're spirit beings, but yet we're also human. And so we have to, in a sense, find a middle path, a way of being in the world and dealing with those fragmented parts of who we are, because regardless of how we approach this path to self-actualization, there's always going to be some shadow elements. But if you understand how to, in a sense, listen to those impulses that are coming up from your unconscious, because it's not about listening for how someone else does it or listening for how Dr. Jesse does it, but it's about listening for how your soul communicates to you, whether it's through your writing, through your music, through your video blogging such as this. However your soul communicates to you and through you, get into that Find what works. What doesn't work, eliminate it and move it out of the way. According to Carl Jung, each path is unique, each road is unique, and it is our obligation as spirit beings who are, in a sense, trying to become more individuated and express more of who we are and yield more to the totality of the psyche from within. It's our job and it's our role to, in a sense, give into that and yield to that and allow that to have more fuller expression in our lives. The actual process of individuation sometimes comes about through a shock of the personality. In other words, what happens is who you think you are, regardless of where you are, what stage you are in your life, sometimes becomes shocked or wounded. And you can think that the individuation process is over, you know, with regards to you. You are where you're supposed to be, doing what you're supposed to do, and all of a sudden, boom, there's another call, as Joseph Campbell talks about in his work. But sometimes that call comes about through a shock of the personality or a disturbance of what seems to be normal in your life. Another call emerges. Regardless of where you are and what stage you are, while you're in Earth School, the call can come at any moment or any stage of the game. That's the beauty about this Earth School. There is no retirement, in a sense, unless you choose to withdraw, in a sense, from society and refuse the call. And there are, you know, things that happen because you refuse the call. But for the most part, usually from a wounding of your life, like something in your life gets disturbed drastically. And Joseph Campbell refers to this as the initial call, and Carl Jung talks about it too. The individuation process, remember, is this path to self-actualization, each individual soul expressing itself fully to its, you know, to the capacity in which, you know, it has, so to speak, it you know, exposing more of who it is, breaking through that conscious awareness, that unconscious energy, that soul energy coming through the ego out into the life. You know, Jesus said, you are a city set up on a hill which cannot be hid. You know, that light coming forth through the ego, you know, and manifesting itself in the world. In order for that to come about, sometimes there's a call or a wounding or a disturbing of the situation or the life of that individual. And regardless of where you are, what stage in the game you are, that call can happen to you, even if you are, in a sense, doing, you know, what you feel that you've been called to do, which is why we often get fragmented, because there are instances where you're on the road and you're doing what God or what you feel spirit or love or life has put you to do, but there's another call that comes about. And the thing about the ego is that it can be our friend, but it can also, you know, this ego, this conscious part of who we are, if it allows us to hold on to things too much. And the way this individuation process works about, life is an adventure. And so with an adventure, there's constant change. And you have to, folks, be ready for change when it comes, because change is the only constant in the universe, and change will come, you know. And so Carl Jung goes on to say that through this individuation process and through the answering of the call, sometimes the ego will refuse the call, and what it will do is it'll interpret what's going on right now in life as a manifestation of something external. In other words, it won't accept the message that's coming forth from within and pulling stuff to you. It'll take the stuff that's coming from within and pulling outward into your life. It'll take it and reflect it back and bounce it off against to something else. And what'll happen is you'll explain it away. Well, this happened because of that, or that happened because of that. When, to be honest, there's a deeper call coming about. There's a new message. There's a new group. There's a new family. There's a new people. There's a new job. There's a new opportunity that's coming about. And it's for your growth. But you don't want to heed the call. And so Carl Jung says it's best to heed the call, because the frustration and the pain and the anguish of, you know, thinking about what you could have had because you did not listen to the call, those possibilities are enough to make you even more fragmented. So during those moments in which you feel fragmented, and some of you that feel fragmented, and I've also felt fragmented myself, you're probably at a place or a stage where you're doing something and it's becoming the norm to you, and yet there's still that thirst from the inside. That's one of the ways in which you can know that you are at that place where that call is coming back, that there's a call to something else. You're trying to find something that doesn't have a name. You're looking for advice that no one can give. You're trying to read a book that hasn't been written yet. You know, you're looking for that thing, you know, to help explain or quench that thirst on the inside. And according to Jung in spiritual psychology, the best thing to do is just give in to the thirst. Instead of trying to quench it, explore that dark area, explore that unknown. Instead of trying to just find an explanation for it and just put a cap over it and shut it down, explore that and go deep into that and see where it leads, because what will happen is it'll yield something unexpected, something symbolic, something that you could probably not even conceive of in your mind, and it's all a part of your individual purpose. You know, it could be something, you know, that eyes have not seen or ears have not heard. Who knows what it could be for you? Who knows what you could become? Who knows what greatness lies in store for you? But you have to heed the call. Though you're fragmented, though you're pulled apart, though life is changing, you know, throw yourself into life. Don't withdraw from life, because remember, your unconscious is leading you. You know, your unconscious is the compass. You know, your ego is just there driving, you know, but your unconscious is the motor behind your psyche. You know, it's the force, it's that initial force that's allowing you to move and breathe and things like that. That soul, that's what's driving you. Listen to that, heed that, and that's what will guide you through the fragmented period. I'm Jesse Herriott. My website is www.jessherriott.com. That's JESSHERRIOTT. I am a spiritual psychologist scholar, and I'd love to talk with you more via social networking or through my website or through my blog and my writings about spiritual psychology and concepts like this and individuation and a whole lot more. Stay tuned. There'll be a lot more personal video blogs. I have a brand new app out if you're interested in psychology and spirituality and how the two meet in order to help you become more individuated. You can download the app. You'll have direct access to all of my social networking stuff, and also you'll have direct access to me, because you can email me directly through the app, and I can get your spiritual psychology question and shoot you a quick response right back. But I'd love to talk with you and connect with you. Until then, I'll see you next time. Be blessed.